Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming to our session. We're really happy for you all to be here and maybe ask us some questions later. We are going to be taking questions through the Slido app. So if you have that, you know the routine. Click on the session, go to engage, submit some questions. And if you don't want to do that, if you want to go old school and raise your hand, we're good with that too. Okay? So we had a really fun thing happen in the last couple of years I want to share with you. But first, we want to know a little bit about you. Those of you who are out there, can you tell us, let's see, raising hands, how many of you all are K through 12 formal education teachers? All right, great. How many of you are K through 12 other folks like administrators or support staff? All right. How about university folks? Anybody university professors? Kind of support staff? Okay, great. Anyone from the informal education world? Scouting, museums, after school? All right, good. And who did we miss? Anybody want to shout out? What are you? Who are you? Photographer, all right. Yeah. Ed tech, all right, great. Awesome, that's super. Okay, cool. So I guess, Lyle, we should probably tell them who we are a little bit.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So just out of curiosity, how many of you have heard of NASA? By show of hands. Okay, usually I see a lot of hands go up for that, which is great. Well done. How many of you have heard of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory? Okay, usually I do not see such a large percentage of hands go up for that, so that's great to hear. So for those of you who did not raise your hand, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory is part of NASA. We are NASA's lead center for robotic exploration of the solar system. So when you think about those words all together, we've got robots that we send out to different places in the solar system to explore. We're happy to say that we have sent spacecraft to every planet in the solar system. Some people will say, well, you haven't sent anything to Pluto, and we'll remind them that Pluto's not a planet. So we can still get away with our every spacecraft to every planet in the solar system. So as you can see on the slide here, not only do we send spacecraft to different places in the solar system, we also do a lot of studying of Earth. And we also have, you can see in that middle upper image, the dish. We also use or manage the Deep Space Network, which we use to communicate with spacecraft beyond the orbit of the solar system, beyond the orbit of the moon.
And specifically, the people on stage here, we represent the JPL Education Office. And the Education Office at JPL is pretty small, about 20 of us. And we have three major functions. One is formal K-12 education, where we support teachers in the classroom and K-12 students. And then there's the informal education group, and they support museums, science centers, out-of-school time education, youth groups, that sort of thing. And then our higher education group, they work with universities, a lot of internship programs, collaboration with universities for supporting curriculum development and such. Specifically, we're mostly here, the K-12 team. I'm the group supervisor in the crowd. And I was a high school math teacher prior to coming to NASA about 20 years ago. And then Lyle is one of our folks.
I am, in fact, one of our folks. So I was a second grade and fourth grade teacher for 7 years before coming to JPL. I focused primarily in educational technology, so the person who is out in the crowd from EdTech, awesome. And so I'll talk a little bit more about how that fits into what we did, and I'll pass it on to Kim.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am the web producer in the JPL Education Office. So I have a few different roles, but the biggest one is that I manage our JPL Education website, jpl.nasa.gov/edu if you'd like to visit it. This is where we have all of the wonderful lessons, activities, and other educational resources that our K-12 team creates. So you can go there, find them, sort through them, and use them for your classroom. We also have programs and opportunities for our college students. So there's our internships listing on that page as well. And my role is to edit all of the content that goes to that page, as well as write some of the content. So I write articles about students and share the wonderful things that they're doing at JPL. And then I do some graphic design work as well, graphics that go along with the lessons and activities and sometimes serve as the lessons themselves. And then the final part of what I do is take all of that great work that we're doing and I share it on our social media channels and our digital communications platforms.
So as you can see, we're a wide variety of talents up here, and we keep Kim very busy. The other folks on our team, we didn't have enough travel dollars to bring them all here, but they are also folks of multiple talents. Brandon Rodriguez is another education specialist, a high school chemistry teacher. Paula Partita runs our Educator Resource Center. So if you are a K-12 teacher or an informal educator or even a university faculty, and you need resources for your students, you contact Paula and she will hook you up. And Jessica Parker is the wizard of all trades and does a lot of our support work. So that's who we are. Now, a couple years ago, we did a little pandemic pivot. We're just like y'all. We had to find something different to do for the pandemic.
Yeah, so if you take a look at the slide, you might notice that ominous calendar of March 2020. And we were actually, as a team, getting ready to come to this conference before it was canceled, and all of our travel plans were canceled as well, along with so many other things that just completely upended everything that we did. And so we needed to think about not only what we were going to be doing differently, but what were schools doing differently? How could we adapt to support teachers in the classroom, or more appropriately, teachers who were then teaching from home, teaching remotely, teaching students who were at their homes in a meaningful way that allowed them to still access curriculum and learn the concepts that they were being taught.
So how did we adapt? Well, the first thing is we listened to our customers. That's where we get all our information, is we listen to folks and they're like, oh my goodness, we have to teach online. We need stuff that we can do remotely. Our kids don't have a bunch of materials at home. They don't have printers. Some of us didn't have printers. And we're hearing from museums. Everybody is like, we've got to do something to support all these kids who are just all of a sudden decentralized and at home trying to learn, and then trying to also support parents. How many of you are parents who had kids at home we were trying to help out here? Some of you? All right, yeah. So, a lot of parents are trying to, do their jobs and also do their work, and it was just tough. So we came up with a website. NASA came up with a website called NASA at Home, and we stood up a website called Learning Space with NASA at Home. And we converted a bunch of our lessons. We had a lot of lessons for the classroom, and we converted those into DIY projects for kids. And we also started making little 2 to 5 minute how-to videos so kids could figure out how to do this stuff kind of on their own. So we also started doing live streams for educators and doing Q&As for students. So we'd have some of our scientists and engineers talking to your folks at home and trying to get the professional development going for the parents, educators, whoever was out there trying to help out kids. So we had to get creative. What did we do to get creative? We tried all kinds of stuff. So we were supposed to be, we had this big event going on, right? We were going to launch a rocket to Mars, launch a rover to Mars. And normally for a launch, we have an educator conference at the launch site. So at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, we had a room reserved. We had 100 people. And we were ready to go. We're going to have teachers there. We're going to have speakers from the mission. And then we're going to take them out to the launch, all this good stuff. Well, of course, that got canceled. And so then we're like, okay, what are we going to do? Well, we decided maybe instead of serving 100 teachers, we could do something online and serve more. And so we ended up doing some live streams. We basically live streamed an educator conference in parts and basically taught teachers how to do some of these activities we were planning to do in person, and they got to hear the speakers online. So we had this educator conference that was supposed to be in person, serving about 100 people, ended up serving like over 1,000. So ended up kind of being a pretty good deal. And then it was time for landing. Now, it takes 8 months or so to get to Mars, and we're like, okay, in 8 months the pandemic's gonna be over, right? Yeah. So we didn't think too much about it. We're like, okay, we're gonna do something for landing, but we weren't sure what. And then as landing got closer and we realized pandemic not going away right now, this was a year ago now. It was actually a little bit, year and a half ago. It was December of 2020. We're like, okay, we got to figure out something to do here. And if you remember back where you were in December of 2020, just about everybody was thinking, pandemic should have been over by now, right? And so everybody's getting tired. What do we do? Well, we wanted to give folks everywhere an opportunity to join us on our mission. So we had designed this mission, we had launched it, and we were going to land. And we could have done something really simple, but the 3 people up here, we're all a little bit crazy. This was December. We were landing in February, and we wanted to do something that would reach kids everywhere. And we didn't want it to be something that people had to pay a bunch of money for or have a bunch of fancy equipment for. We want anybody, anywhere to be able to do this thing. So that's tricky when you're doing this fancy space mission, you're trying to make it accessible for kids. We wanted to especially target our underserved populations because our underserved kids are some of the ones who struggled the most. They had less support. They had a little bit more trouble. So we're like, gosh, what are we gonna do? So we thought about it, and we came up with something. And we're gonna see if we can try to play this video here.
I'm Emily. NASA is landing the next rover on Mars in February, and they want kids from all over the world to join in the excitement. They're inviting educators and families to lead students in designing and building their own mission to Mars. Then, land with perseverance on February 18th. It's the Mission to Mars Student Challenge. With 5 weeks of activities, professional development for teachers, and opportunities to chat with engineers and scientists, NASA's Mission to Mars Student Challenge has everything you need to bring students from brainstorming to liftoff all the way to Mars. Register your students today to join NASA as they prepare to touch down on Mars, and I'll see you on landing day. Touchdown confirmed, we're safe on Mars.
So that was the trailer for the Mission to Mars Student Challenge. You may have recognized Emily Calandrelli. She was a MIT scientist or engineer, and she actually had the Netflix series that was, what was it called?
Emily's Wonderlab.
Ah, yes, Emily's Wonderlab. And she volunteered to help us out with the promo. So what we came up with was 7 weeks of guided education plans that followed the mission design process. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the future. We decided to send out newsletters every week to folks who signed up. We had video conversations every week with mission experts that followed the mission theme of the week. And we had some live Q&As with mission experts for students. And prior to all of those 7 weeks, we started out with a professional development for teachers, giving them the background of the mission so they knew what the science and engineering was going on. And then we invited the kids to land with us on February 18th.
All right, so we had all of these ideas in mind. We had this big idea in mind and all of these pieces of content, but we needed a way to pull it all together into one cohesive unit so that people could follow along with the mission and really feel like they were following along with the landing of this rover on Mars. So we knew we couldn't just throw out all of this content and expect people to wade their way through it and design a mission for their classroom without a little guidance. So what we did was we pulled together a few different pieces that would allow people to be guided through this challenge. The first piece of this was a landing page. On the landing page, we had everything that you could possibly need related to the challenge. This is where you could go. This was your home base for key dates, upcoming live streams, all the videos that we did, all of the lessons and activities that went along with each phase of the mission. This was the place that you went for all of it, the portal to all of it. Then what we had was a sign-up page. This was partly so that we could keep track of all of the participants that were signing up for the challenge and engaging with the challenge. But then it was also so that we could send this weekly newsletter that Ota had mentioned that would really be the true guide through the challenge. So each week we would send our participants a newsletter, and it provided an intro about that phase of the challenge and how to go about doing it in the classroom or at your educational center or even at home. And it would provide learning tips and teaching tools that you could use to get your students engaged with the challenge. And it had links to lessons and activities that you can use. It had links to all kinds of educational resources. So that was really the guide each week through each phase of the challenge. And then the next thing we had was a showcase page. So it was a little bit of a selfish thing because we wanted to see all the cute photos of the kids engaging with the challenge and getting excited and working on their projects and learning. But it was also so that as students and others were celebrating this achievement that we were making, landing a rover on Mars, we were also celebrating students' achievement of doing their own missions and learning about engineering and science. So we had set up a page where teachers and parents could go and share the pictures of their students working on the challenge, share a comment about how they were doing and how they were liking it. And so all of these pieces really served as the connective thread between all of the pieces of content that we developed around this challenge.
We thought, we try not to set like huge goals for ourselves, like too big, right? Kind of attainable goals. We thought if we got 10,000 kids signed up, we'd be like jamming. We'd be like, yeah, 10,000 kids, that'd be awesome. Well, the registrations started rolling in and rolling in and rolling in. And halfway to February 18th, we were at like 500,000 kids. And we're like, holy smokes, now the pressure's really on because people are paying attention. Well, by the time February 18th, which was landing day, by the time that rolled around, we had 1.2 million kids worldwide signed up, which is tremendous. We had kids just like in all 50 states, most of the US territories, countries around the world. It was just amazing. And as Kim was talking about the showcase, we saw all these images coming in of kids everywhere, and it was just amazing. We had 729 museums, libraries, and after-school programs that were involved. And each of those had thousands of kids they were reaching. And we're kind of overwhelmed at this point. A little team putting together this really cool thing that people really liked. And we wanted, as I mentioned before, we really wanted to reach these underserved audiences. So we partnered with a lot of people trying to get the word out to the right audiences. The U.S. Department of Education, of course, reaches out to every school in the nation. And we worked with them. We worked with Discovery Education. We worked with every school district that would listen to us. Every organization that would listen to us, basically. We got lots and lots of publicity out there. And the cool thing is, because we're teachers, those of you who are teachers, those of you who create any kind of curriculum, you create something and you don't create it for just once, right? You're like, I want to create something that I could use again and again. So we tried to make this thing evergreen. We got a lot of good feedback from folks, not just using it during the landing sequence, but also summer and then even fall. So that was kind of cool. So this thing is, as I mentioned, it follows how we do a mission at JPL. So before you're going to go to a planet, or anywhere in the solar system, before you're going to go anywhere, you got to learn about that planet. You got to learn about where you're going, so you understand the environment, you understand the risks, hazards, the advantages. You got to do all this good research. So the first week was learn about Mars. Now, after you know what your mission is, what your target is, you got to talk about what you're going to do when you get there. What kind of science are you going to do? How much money is it going to cost? You have to plan your mission. So that was week 2, plan your mission. Now you got your mission decided, you're going to do this or that scientifically, whatever. Third thing is you got to build that spacecraft, okay? Build a spacecraft that can actually accomplish the things you want to do. And then, so that's week 3. And then you have to launch that spacecraft, so that's week 4. And then we don't have to wait 8 months. So, okay, next you're going to land your spacecraft. And then after you've landed, you're going to start surface operations, start doing your science. And then in this particular case, we were collecting samples for the very first time on the surface of Mars. So sample collection and sample handling was our last week, week 7. We actually did, just so you know, we started out with 5 weeks because we didn't know if we were going to have a good or a bad day on Mars. And so we started out with 5 weeks. The minute we had a successful landing, we pushed go on weeks 6 and 7. So that way we had, we didn't want to have something out there that was, sad. Well, we didn't get to do this because we had a bad day on Mars. We ended up having a good day on Mars, so it was all good.
All right, so as Ota mentioned, we really wanted to make this an evergreen challenge. So we didn't want this to just end with the landing on Mars, but still to this day, when you go to the landing page for the landing on Mars, you can engage with the challenge. You can do it anew. Teachers can start again with their next, semesters or next year's classes. And so when you go to the landing page, there are a number of pieces of content and things that you can gather to make your plan. And I'm going to let Ota and Lyle go into a little bit more detail about what each of those things are. But just to give you an idea of what you can do here, another thing that we wanted to do was make it as flexible as possible. So it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. You can go to this page if you want to engage with all 7 weeks of the challenge, if you want to do it in 7 weeks or 5, or you can kind of choose what works for you and what works for your students. And you can pull the resources together that make the most sense for you as well. So on this page, you can find a summary of each of the mission phases that Ota was just mentioning. There are introductory videos with scientists and engineers talking about what they do and how it relates to each of those mission phases. There are also recordings of our live stream talks that we did with Q&As. There are teaching tips and learning goals that you can explore there. All of the standards aligned lessons for each phase of the challenge. There's almost 100 of them that you can search through there. And then we have additional educational resources as well. There's outreach materials. So say you want to find the latest images from Mars or posters that we released as part of the landing. You can find all of that on this page. And so it's really meant to be a one-stop shop for anything that you could possibly need and really be able to customize the challenge to fit your particular student's needs.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our video products that were made for this challenge. As Kim mentioned, we wanted to keep this evergreen, so they were recorded live, but we made them in a way that they would be reusable in the future. And there were a couple different types of video products, and we thought about them in different ways as we were designing them to serve multiple purposes for students and teachers. So we started with an introductory live stream, which was recorded, and so it's still available. If you're a teacher and you want to use this challenge with your students, you can go and watch an introductory the introductory recording, and you can hear the engineer talk about the challenge. During the live streams, we had an online question and answer system so that teachers were able to submit questions, and you can still hear those questions and see the answers to those questions as well. In addition to those, we did a weekly video for each phase of the mission. So we had an engineer or a scientist talking about what they do in their role for that part of the mission. So when it came to landing on Mars, we had an engineer talking about what they have to consider when they land on Mars, what sorts of things the spacecraft itself is doing when it's landing on Mars. And so all of those things were addressed each week, so that at the beginning of the week, if the teacher chose to, they could play the video for the student, and the students would be able to get a little bit of that background information before they went into the challenges of that week that they were assigned or that they chose to do. In addition to that, in the days leading up to landing, we had several live stream events where we had engineers talking to different grade levels. So we had a K through, we broke it up as an elementary, a middle school, and a high school session. And then we also had an all grades session on the morning of landing. And that was another one where we had live question and answer so that people could go online, submit their questions, and we'd be able to answer those questions as they came in. We were also able to pre-record some questions from students and feed them into the live stream, so that not only were there the online text questions that we were getting fed, but we were also able to include students who are participating in the challenge as part of the landing week live streams, which was pretty exciting for us because they were really adorable questions, but also really exciting for the students because then they got to see that they were part of this. So we really wanted to have a set of videos that would get students involved, get them connected to what's going on with the mission, but it also allowed for us to sort of do a for lack of a better phrase, introduction to some of these careers. So I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I didn't know what an engineer was beyond somebody who drove a train. And so having these different types of engineers talking about what they do during these different parts of missions really helped to sort of solidify what an engineer is and how they solve problems and how they build to solve different problems and meet different challenges, which is exactly what the students were going to be doing. The other thing that it allowed us to do is it allowed us to showcase the diversity on these missions. And at certain points of this mission, there were up to 3,000 people working on this mission. And so we wanted to let students know that, hey, it's not just older white guys who are engineers developing these missions. There are a lot of different people who are working on these missions, and by representing them, giving them that visual of like, oh, there's somebody who looks like me or who is like me, and I can do this too.
And we also had those videos translated into Spanish. So in our introduction, we talked about Paula Partida. She's our Educator Resource Center coordinator. Paula is fluent in English and Spanish, and we knew that we had this tremendous audience out there that was Spanish speaking, and especially with parents at home. Maybe kids spoke Spanish, but the parents are trying to help them, and the kids spoke English, but the parents are trying to help them with whatever they're trying to do, and help to have the captions in Spanish. And then with the worldwide attention, the Spanish-speaking countries, that was a big deal.
Yeah, and one thing I guess I didn't mention, if you take a look at the slides, you'll notice the backgrounds for all of these scientists and engineers are their homes. They were not coming into JPL, they were not coming into the studio, so we had to figure out ways that we could record them doing these live streams, broadcasting them out. And so fortunately, we had the opportunity to do some tests run during the launch live streams to sort of work out the bugs and figure out how this could actually work. And it turns out we were able to successfully do that with people being at their homes and still being able to do these live Q&As back and forth with the education specialists, the engineers, and the teachers and students who are watching live. Oh yeah, this is me too. So in terms of once the students watched the videos or were introduced to the weekly topics, we wanted to make sure that the content they were getting was going to be useful and We did that in a couple different ways. So first of all, they needed to address the STEM disciplines. We didn't want to have just, some coloring sheets or some activities that really didn't match what engineers and scientists were going to be doing. So we wanted to make sure that we were hitting those different STEM disciplines. We also wanted to make sure that we spanned the K through 12 band. So we had K through 2, we had 3 through 5, we had middle school, and we had high school. And every week there was a selection of activities at every grade band. So it wasn't, if you were a kindergarten teacher, you were going to miss out on week 3 because we didn't have anything. We looked at, as Kim mentioned, over 100 different lessons that we had. We found the gaps, and if there was something missing, we found a way to address those different grade bands that didn't have anything for that particular week. And we didn't just make something that was going to be, again, something kind of fun or anything like that. I think they're all fun, but we also made sure that they addressed NGSS standards or Common Core math standards, because we knew that if we said, hey teachers, we know you're overloaded, you have a lot to do, here's something that doesn't really fit anything that you're doing, please do it, we weren't going to get anybody to do it. And so by saying, hey teachers, we know you're overloaded, we know you have a lot to teach, here is something that you can use to teach the things that you need to teach, and we're giving you as much support as we can for it, we thought we'd have a little bit more buy-in that way. So we wanted to do that in terms of addressing standards. We also knew that parents were just sort of at a point where they wanted to get their kids away from the screen all day. And so a lot of these were, hey, here's the project, here are the materials, here's your end goal, step away from the computer, go do it, take a picture, send it to our share campaign, let your teacher know what your artifact looks like so we can see it, but at least they're getting away from the screen for a little while and kind of stepping away from that. You'll notice there's an asterisk there. That is because there were a couple things that did involve being in front of a computer, and that were some of our coding challenges that we included as part of the different weekly phases. So there was a landing on Mars one, a driving on Mars one, and I think a flying a Mars helicopter coding challenge. So there were some things that did involve being in front of a screen, but we tried to make that as limited as possible and very purposeful if you were going to have a student sitting in front of a screen. We also wanted students to be able to do these things using simple household supplies. It was actually kind of a neat challenge for us because we had to walk around our houses and look around and say, like, what do I have in my cupboards that I can turn into some sort of engineering activity? And what can I ask parents and teachers to supply to their students that isn't going to break the bank? I'm not going to ask them to go out and buy some expensive piece of equipment for every one of their students, or a single one that gets passed around and by the end of the 35th student it's broken. So what do we have around the house that we can use, that we can ask teachers and parents to assign to their students? And how can we make sure this is also available as a remote option? So that was sort of how we addressed the hands-on activities that the students needed to do once they had the introduction to that weekly challenge, whatever phase it happened to be.
And in some cases, we were using different things at our houses because we didn't all three have the same thing. So I might use a little ball, and Kim might have a bead, and Lyle might have a piece of clay. But as long as it was something that could, fit the bill, it didn't matter. And we figured that was kind of going to happen at kids' houses too. We have these things called Teachable Moments. I'm just going to kind of plug another one of our products. If you hear something, if you're a teacher and you hear something cool in the news, maybe you have time to go read about it, maybe you don't. But you're certainly going to have a precocious youngster walk into your classroom and say, hey, did you hear about the blah, 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 blah? And maybe your answer is yes, because you watched the same news show. Maybe your answer is, I don't know, I was grading your papers. So what we do is we try to give, we find out about these big news items that are happening. We go read the technical papers, and we write a summary that is relevant to teachers in the classroom and teachers in informal education settings too. And it gives you all the kind of the down and dirty of what's going on, and then the links out to all the scientific background if you want to learn more. We call those Teachable Moments. So we had one of those for launch, we had one for landing, and that gives folks kind of the bones of what's going on for the mission. And then, as Kim mentioned, there was a bunch of graphics developed, all sorts of things that were ready for any educator to use in their classroom as they saw fit. So lots and lots of resources. Now, we thought we'd take you through one of our simple activities, just so you'd have an idea of what it's like. So this is called Make a Paper Mars Helicopter. And you can see Lyle has brought his very fancy equipment, a piece of paper, and a pair of scissors. That is all you need. Now, you can see in the diagram up here, we had a template. That center picture is a template. Now, if you had a printer, you could print that out, but I'm just going to out Kim over here. Kim did not have a printer, and we're like, oh man, Kim's the one's got to take the pictures for the website. How's she going to do this? So Kim's like, oh, I know. I'll just take a blank piece of paper, hold it up to the monitor, trace the template, and then I've got it. So we're like, okay, cool. Let's add that to the activity. This is something teachers, you could tell the kids to do at home. So basically, you're cutting out this paper helicopter. It doesn't look like much, but it doesn't look like much yet, I should say. You cut out the dash lines, and that's what Lyle's doing here. You can see there are a couple of more things in the materials picture there in the middle. You know, that's a strip of paper on the left or a ribbon or something of the sort, and a tape measure if you have it. If you don't, no big deal. All right, so Lyle, we've got you got all the dash lines cut?
Well, I also didn't have a printer here in Austin, and so I actually just traced it as well. So I don't have dashed lines, but I remembered which ones I was supposed to cut and which ones I was supposed to fold, fortunately. So yes, I am ready. I have cut out my cut lines, and I'm going to fold on some of my fold lines. Now, right now it does not look like much, as Ota mentioned, but we're going to turn it into a helicopter. And so, Ota, I actually have to put the mic down, so I might need you to kind of guide me through this.
Okay, all right. So did you label those X, Y, Z, A, B, and all that good stuff? You have no?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I know which ones they are.
Okay, all right. So flaps X and Y fold inward. All right? Yep, good. Good job, Lyle. Okay, now flap Z, you fold that one up. Yeah, just up once. All right. Now, that looks like a football goalpost from the side. Okay. Now, you've got flaps A and B up there. You're going to fold one of them one way and the other way.
This is where I'm going to need some audience help. So I have to think my left is this side. On this side is A, this side is B. And for A, do you want me to fold towards you or away from you? Away. All right. So fold that one away, which means the other one I do have to fold towards you.
All right. So now Lyle has a paper helicopter. Now, you may have made one of these before yourself, but now it's different because it's a Mars helicopter. And you're going to give it a drop? Oh, how fun is that, hey? Yeah.
Good job.
So here's the quiz. I know I didn't tell you there was going to be one. How many times did it rotate? And which direction did it rotate? Okay, so I'm seeing some fingers spinning, telling me which way it's rotated. Okay, so this is a good observation that we would ask students to make as part of the helicopter that they would make. There are a couple different ways that you can actually count how many times it rotates. You can take a cell phone and you can record it in slow motion and then replay it and actually physically count how many times it goes around. On the image page, you'll see there's a ribbon. You can actually take a piece of ribbon, step on it, and then when you let go, count how many twists there are in the ribbon, and that'll give you a count as well. So that's all well and good. That's an observation of performance. The next step then is, how can I modify this design to improve the performance? And what improvement is can sort of be determined by you as the teacher. The student might want to make that determination about what the performance is. Maybe they want it to spin faster. Maybe they want it to spin the other direction. And so you can have students make single modifications to figure out what will change the performance of their design. So I need somebody to tell me a modification they would like me to make. All right, flip the directions of the flaps.
All right, what changed?
So what did you notice changed? The direction of the spin changed, absolutely. So lots of different ways you can modify this design, changing the length of the blades, changing the direction that you flip them, changing the Z-flap fold, lots of different ways that you can modify it. And that's kind of the idea, is to explore with this and see what change does to your design.
Now, of course, I'm the math teacher up here. I wouldn't just be like, okay, count the twirls, right? I'd be like, let's do some investigation here and predict some stuff. So you can do the whole engineering side of the house, like Lyle is modeling here, is, you know, change how it performs, and, you know, get a better improved performance. Or you could do the math side of the house, which is measure how high you're dropping it from, 3 feet or so, and drop it and count the rotations, and then drop it from 5 feet, count the rotations, keep going, and then till the kid can't reach it, and then be like, okay, so now predict how many rotations would you get if you dropped it from 9 feet or 7 feet or something reasonable, whatever fits in the classroom. And then hopefully maybe you have a little ladder or step stool, and then you could, verify it, get your empirical to go with your predicted. So just lots of stuff to do with something like this, and all it is paper and scissors. So that's the kind of stuff we do. Like, it's related to what we're doing at NASA. It's not necessarily that we're flying a paper helicopter on Mars, but you're also not going to have a whole bunch of high-end metals and solar panels at your house. So you're not going to be able to build one of those. So that's the kind of stuff that we do. Now, we want to talk about how some folks have made this their own. Did anybody in this room do the Mars Challenge with their students? Just brand new. It's brand new to y'all? Okay, that's cool.
Good news, it's still there and you can do it.
Yes, exactly. So we had lots of people sending us pictures, as I mentioned, and a whole bunch of different settings. So we just picked a couple of these to give kind of a case study for you. This is Mulholland Middle School. It's in a immigrant area of Los Angeles. So high immigrant population, a lot of English language learners, and the teachers decided that they were going to do a whole 7th grade unit, and it was the whole 7 weeks that we that we did this thing. And they involved the history teachers, the English teachers, the science teachers, the math teachers. Well, you can probably figure out how the science and math teachers did this. It's like, that's pretty obvious. There's science, there's math. But for the the history teachers, they learned about the history of rocketry and the history of the space exploration on Mars. And then in English class, they wrote about what they were doing in the science class and in the math class. So they had a lot of just this whole cross-curricular integration thing. And by the way, this was all virtual. That school was 100% virtual all the time at that time. And so it was really pretty interesting. They had a lot of interesting work. The kids got really excited about it because right around February of 2021, folks were getting pretty tired, if you remember. Well, everybody was getting pretty tired. Then I got a call over the summer from New Zealand, strangely enough, our summer. They're not their summer. And these folks were like, hey, we saw this Mission to Mars Student Challenge, and we didn't do it with you guys, but we wanted to do our own. And we came up with this idea to do a 10-week project with all of our elementary schools in what they call their STEAM cluster. So we're talking about 2,000 kids here. And these kids were, everything they did, there were no other classes, everything was involved in this Mission to Mars Student Challenge. They used a lot of our stuff, but they also used stuff from other sources. Because let's just face it, we go explore Mars, but we don't have the corner on the Mars market here. There's a whole bunch of other great stuff out there on Mars. And so they grabbed a whole bunch of other stuff, brought it in. They had webinars with us, but they also, if you know where New Zealand is on the map, they're pretty close to us to Antarctica, right? I mean, well, closer than we are. They actually had scientists in their local area who work in Antarctica. And so they brought in specialists. The interesting thing about Antarctica is it's a great Mars analog. Very cold, just like Mars is, very isolated, just like Mars is. And they talked about how those aspects influence exploration. If you're isolated and it's cold and it's dangerous to be outside, how does that influence you? And these kids came up with, they basically designed a settlement for Mars in little groups. Some of them were physical settlements they set up, and some of them were aspects of a settlement. So, like maybe it was how do you grow food? So they just focused on the food, or how do you have recreation? So they would just focus on that part. So those are just a couple of case studies, kind of interesting things, but lots of different ways. Yeah, we heard from lots of parents, lots and lots of parents who are just doing it at home. All right, so strategies for success. If we had to do this again, and if you all wanted to do something like this, we have some ideas. Number one, you got to know the audience, whatever your audience is. So we kind of want to equip you guys for doing this yourselves. If you want to do something with it, you could do it. You could take our thing and do it, or do this with something completely different, a different topic. But number one is know your audience. And as Lyle mentioned, you don't want to do like just something goofy, right? You wanted to give them an authentic experience. Now, you can't give them all kinds of, rocket fuel or something, but there's lots you could do to give them a genuine experience to understand how the science is done. And we wanted folks to have multiple ways for them to engage. Kim mentioned earlier that you could do all 7 weeks and it would be a whole bunch of stuff, or you kind of pick and choose, or maybe you only wanted to join us on landing day. That's totally fine, whatever works. Okay, just have multiple modalities. We inventoried our existing resources, figured out our gaps, so do that. And then involving our whole team in figuring out how we're going to solve this. This was not a top-down, somebody had an idea and everybody else fell in line and made it happen. It was like we all sat down and went, what the heck are we going to do? And we just had all these ideas, and we just kind of figured it out. And then also, identifying internal and external support. As I mentioned, getting the word out to the target audience. We partnered internally with our communications office to get the word out through NASA channels, through social media. We partnered with all sorts of people externally, just really tried to make friends out there and get the word out to folks. And then basically just divvy up the work and get going, because that's kind of the key. So at this point, we'd like to take questions. So I'm not sure.
I think earlier we probably should have said that if you're using the EDU Go app, you can hit engage and submit questions. So if you're online doing that, please do, so we can get your questions. But also, if you're in the audience and you don't have the app, or for whatever reason you would prefer to just raise your hand, we can take questions that way too.
So I'm not seeing anything pop up, or I'm not seeing anything that's popping up. So anybody have any questions for us? Yeah. Oh, right.
So yeah, the question was, what was the website? And I'll give it to Kim so I don't mess it up.
So the short URL is go.nasa.gov/Mars-challenge. And that's a good question, good oversight, for a bad oversight for us to not put that on the slides.
Yeah, and it's the only Mission to Mars student challenge out there that's NASA. So if you forget the URL, you could also Google it. So. All right. Any other questions for us?
It looks like we got one popped up here.
I cannot read that. So Kim, I'm going to have you read that.
All right. With commercialization of space, are you partnering with any commercial companies or introducing that as part of future programming?
Good question. So we are not currently partnering with any other companies. we have good relationships with SpaceX and Northrop Grumman. I mean, we're all contracted to do different parts of the space program. We have in the past partnered with Northrop Grumman for professional development for teachers. We have, in the Los Angeles area where we are, we're the only aerospace organization that has a formal education program. So Northrop Grumman does, I know Northrop Grumman best because we used to partner with them. They have a community outreach, they call it corporate citizenship, where they host workshops for teachers and such, but they don't actually develop curriculum for teachers or develop lessons or anything of the sort. So it's like sometimes they will help us advertise, but they don't do anything like developing lessons or anything of the sort. Neither does Boeing. Boeing used to, but they don't anymore. Do you know anybody else who's doing anything?
Nothing that's coming to mind from the aerospace industry as far as partnerships. I know there are some like educational partnerships through NASA as a whole, but
Yep.
not specifically with our office, like Lego and things like that.
Right. Right.
And it looks like we have another question here. What types of adaptations are or can be made for students with learning thinking differences?
I think that's one of the nice things about the way that these activities are designed, especially the engineering challenges, because those are ones where students are asked to identify their goals. What do they want their spacecraft to do, or what do they want their science investigations to discover? And so in that sense, it is sort of open-ended for students who might be thinking or learning a little bit differently than what we might have intended or thought of when we were writing the challenges. Ota, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I think that's one way that it can be looked at.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's just so many ways you can solve a problem, to be honest. And we actually have heard from a number of special education teachers who have adapted and used the activities in their classrooms. And a lot of times the solutions that these kids come up with are things that are different than some of your traditional learners might come up with, and interesting too. So I think it's just a matter of just working with whatever the kids have as skill sets and trying to give them an opportunity to expand.
And then we've got another one here. It's a good one. Do you plan on creating other challenges in the future?
So we pulled this thing together in 5 weeks, and there are, you saw our small team. Most of the writing and publishing and everything was done by 4 of us, and it was 5 weeks over the holidays, so our families didn't see us much. We didn't get a lot of sleep, so I'm going to say we won't do that again, but.
But I would say that in terms of smaller individual challenges, we're continuing to put those together and release them out. And sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, they turn into a theme. Sometimes we really kind of think about it, and sometimes we look back and think, oh, wow, we have a whole bunch of challenges that are sort of in this realm of science or in this field of engineering. And so we can put together collections. And Kim, I don't know if you want to add anything to that or say kind of how we approach that.
Well, I actually had an idea or thought of a challenge that's coming up right now. They're laughing because I'm known in the office as I have an idea, and then everyone cringes because they just wait for how much work it's going to be. But always great, I have to say. But no, one of the things that we have coming out this Thursday, if it's possible to go back to the slide, we have a final slide on it. But we do every year for the past 9 years, we've been doing this thing called the NASA Pi Day Challenge. And it's a set of 4 illustrated math math problems. We release it around Pi Day, usually a little bit early, to give teachers time to prepare in the classroom and do what they want to do with it. But it's really great. It's basically Lyle, Ota, our other colleague Brandon come up with these really wonderful math problems that involve pi, and our missions and science, they work directly with our experts to come up with them. And then I do the illustrations, and we have this great little challenge that we put out for Pi Day, and it's fun for math enthusiasts and students alike. We also, because there's the graphics associated with it, we also release desktop backgrounds and mobile wallpapers that you can use if you're just interested in the art side of it as well. So that comes out on March 10th, this Thursday, and I would very much encourage you to check that out. That one's at go.nasa.gov/NASA Pi Day Challenge, but there's also the QR code. I didn't forget that one this time. So we do, in a way, have another challenge coming up. And it looks like there's one more question here. The NASA opportunities are vast. Doing anything to introduce information about careers in related fields, i.e. manufacturing, space ag, law, health for space, etc.?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things on the NASA website that feature profiles of individuals. So you can learn about individuals in the career fields. If you just were to do an internet search for NASA career profiles, you would find them. There's a women at NASA, there's a women at JPL, there's a solar system people, and these are interesting profiles in many cases because they're interview type profiles. Sometimes they're video, sometimes they're just written, and that gives a breadth of our career profiles, ideas of what people do. As far as activities, we have anything, Lyle?
I think we have some activities that address those different topics. I know we have some earth science activities that touch on things like agriculture, not necessarily space agriculture, but there are some sort of crossover activities. I don't know that we have anything specific saying like this career in that field, though.
Yeah, we have some just like video profiles of different people. Kim writes a series called Meet the JPL Interns, and it's tons of interesting articles on some of our the kids, what they're doing during their internship, and some of their like how you got to where you are and such. Yep.
Yeah, so the question was, we talked a lot about things that kids could do with low budget materials, but were there any robotics type activities? And yes, there are some robotics activities that challenge students to create a mobile launcher that is robotically controlled. I'm trying to remember what some of our other robotic...
Yeah, we had a series of 3 of them, so I'm going to challenge us to figure out what they are. Each of them individually was a challenge, and so we don't tell kids which robotic system to use. We say, you could basically use Lego or Arduino, whatever it is you have. And the first one was, if you've ever watched a launch from the Kennedy Space Center on TV, prior to the launch, for like a day prior, you see this giant tractor-looking thing crawling out with the rocket on top. It's very, very slow. So the first one was build a rocket transporter and build and program a rocket transporter. And the rocket was a paper rocket, but you got to transport it out and keep the rocket from tipping over. And then there was the one where they had to explore the Mars surface and use a color sensor to determine different minerals. And okay, our minerals were Post-it notes, but it's the different colors, right? But it was using the color sensor. Oh yeah, and actually the one before that was just program the robot to drive around, like avoid obstacles, I think, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So it looks like we've got just about 30-ish seconds or so. So if there were maybe one more short question, we can certainly take that. All right.
All right.
Otherwise, thank you so much for coming. We hope that you got something out of this. I'll hand it to Ota and Kim if they have anything else they wanted to add.
No, yeah, just thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope that you take part in the Pi Day Challenge on coming out on Thursday, and of course going through Pi Day, and go to the Mars Challenge page and definitely check it out and let us know, if you have any questions or anything else that you'd like to do with us. We'd love to talk.
Yeah, and we have if you want to get on our mailing list and find out about what the new stuff coming out, if you just go to jpl.nasa.gov/sign-up. Is that right? Just sign up? Yeah, and then click off for educators. You get on our mailing list, and we don't spam a whole lot. We send you like once a month or so summary of the new activities and such. We are doing a website redesign, so we're going to have some cool new collections coming out. We have a whole bunch of stuff on climate we're putting together, so that should be fun. But thanks all again for coming. We really appreciate it, and have fun with Mars Challenge and the Pi Day Challenge.
Thank you.